big, proud, and full of history. But that night something about it felt off. The long dining table was already set, filled with expensive dishes no one had started eating yet. Everyone was dressed up, sitting straight, talking in soft, careful voices. It wasn't just a family dinner. It felt more like an event where everyone was trying to impress each other. Nala stepped inside quietly, almost like she didn't want to disturb anything. She wasn't dressed flashy like the others. Just simple, neat, and calm. She paused for a second, scanning the room, waiting for someone to notice her. No one did. A few people glanced at her, then quickly looked away like she wasn't important enough to hold their attention. Conversations continued. Laughter filled the room, but none of it included her. "Funmi, you look stunning tonight," someone said loudly. And Saad, "Oh my God, come sit here, let me see you properly." All the attention moved toward Funmi and her daughter Saad. Compliments, smiles, excitement, it all revolved around them. Saad was glowing under it, clearly used to being the center of everything. Nala slowly took a seat at the far end of the table. No one asked her how she was. No one made space for her. It was like she had just blended into the background. She folded her hands in her lap, keeping her face calm, but inside, that familiar feeling crept in. She didn't belong here. Not really. And somehow, tonight felt like it was going to remind her of that more than ever. Dinner had finally started, but Nala still felt like she was just sitting there, not really part of anything. Plates were being passed around, glasses clinked softly, and conversations flowed easily across the table. But somehow, none of it reached her. She kept her eyes on her plate, quietly eating, trying not to draw attention. Every now and then, she would hear laughter from the other side, mostly around Funmi and Saad, and it made her feel even smaller. Then suddenly, in the middle of it all, Saad leaned forward. "Wait," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Before Nala could react, Saad reached across the table and grabbed her wrist. Everything happened so fast. Her fingers wrapped around Nala's bracelet, lifting it slightly so everyone could see it better. The movement was casual, almost playful, but something about it didn't feel right. Nala's body went still. Saad tilted her head, looking at the bracelet with a small smile that slowly turned into a laugh. "Oh my God," she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Mom said this is from a flea market." For a second there was silence. Then, a few people chuckled. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough. Enough to make it worse. Someone at the table let out a soft laugh like it was just a harmless joke. Another person smirked and looked away. No one said anything to stop it. No one defended her. Nala felt her chest tighten. Her eyes stayed fixed on her wrist, still in Sada's grip. She didn't pull away. She didn't speak. She just froze. Across the table, Funmi didn't say a word, but she was smiling. Not a big smile. Not obvious. Just a small, knowing smirk, as if she had already heard this joke before. As if she was waiting for this exact moment to happen. And that's when it hit Nala. This wasn't random. The way Saad said it, the way Funmi reacted, the way no one seemed surprised. It all felt too perfectly timed. Like they had been waiting for her to sit there quietly, just so they could pull this. A slow wave of embarrassment washed over her. It burned deeper because she hadn't even done anything. She had just come, sat down, and stayed quiet. And still, she became the center of attention in the worst way. Her fingers twitched slightly, but she still didn't move. It felt like the whole room was watching her now, waiting to see how she would react. But Nala didn't give them anything. She just sat there, silent, holding herself together. 'Cause somehow she knew. This moment wasn't just an insult. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Nala slowly moved her hand and gently pulled her wrist back from Sada's grip. She didn't snatch it. She didn't rush. Just calm, controlled, like she was trying to protect something fragile. Her fingers lightly touched the bracelet, almost instinctively, like she needed to feel it was still there. The table was still quiet, but she could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her. Waiting, watching. But Nala wasn't looking at them anymore. Her mind had already drifted somewhere else. Back to the day she first got it. It wasn't a big moment. There was no party, no audience, no loud celebration. Just a quiet afternoon, the kind no one remembers. Except her. He had called her over, his voice calm, serious, but soft in a way he never was with others. "Come here, Nala." She remembered walking up to him, unsure, a little nervous. No one else was around, just the two of them. He held the bracelet in his hand, turning it slightly as if checking something only he could see. It wasn't flashy. No big diamonds, no gold shine that screamed money. Just simple. Almost too simple. "That's why it matters," he had said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. She didn't understand at first. Some things don't need to look expensive to be valuable. Then he placed it on her wrist himself, carefully, like it meant something, like she meant something. "Keep it safe," he told her, his eyes meeting hers in a way that felt deeper than just words. "One day, you'll understand." And that was it. No one else saw it happen. No one else asked about it later. And honestly, no one else cared. Over the years, whenever someone noticed the bracelet, it was always the same reaction. "It looks cheap. Why do you still wear that? You should get something better." They never saw anything special in it. To them, it was just another piece of jewelry. Something small, forgettable, replaceable. But to Nala, it was never just a bracelet. It was the only thing she had that felt like it truly belonged to her. A quiet reminder that, at least once, someone had seen her, chosen her, without needing an audience. Back at the table, her fingers tightened slightly around it. The laughter, the whispers, the judgment. It all faded into the background for a moment. Because they didn't know. They never did. They looked at it and saw something worthless. But for Nala, this wasn't cheap. This wasn't random. This was legacy. Years ago, long before moments like this dinner, before the silence and the quiet disrespect, things were different for Nala. Not with everyone, just with one person, Babatun. While the rest of the family stayed busy praising Funmi and her side, Nala somehow always ended up in the background, ignored, overlooked, like she didn't really matter. But Babatun noticed. He didn't make a big show of it. He wasn't the type to call attention or start long conversations in front of others. In fact, if anyone was watching, it almost looked like he treated Nala the same as everyone else. But when no one was around, it was different. He would call her quietly, "Nala, come sit." And she would sit beside him, a little unsure at first, not knowing why he had chosen her. Sometimes he didn't even say much. They would just sit together in comfortable silence. Other times he would ask her small questions. "What do you see when you walk into a room? Who speaks? And who listens?" At first, Nala didn't understand why he asked things like that. But slowly she started to realize. He wasn't just talking, he was teaching. Not loudly, not in a way others could notice, but in a way that stayed with her. He showed her how to observe people, how to stay calm when others tried to make her feel small, how to think before speaking. He never told her directly, "You are different." But the way he gave her his time, said it anyway. The strange part was, no one else seemed to see it. Or maybe, they never cared enough to notice. The family was too focused on louder personalities, bigger presence, more impressive people. Funmi was always at the center. Her voice, her opinions, her plans, everything revolved around her. And Nala, she was just there. So whatever bond she had with Babatun stayed hidden, quiet, unspoken. There were moments when she wondered if she imagined it. If maybe she was just reading too much into simple gestures. But then there were days he would look at her across a crowded room, just one glance, and it felt like he was saying, "I see you." And that was enough. Enough to keep her grounded. Enough to make her feel like she wasn't invisible, at least not to everyone. To the rest of the family, Nala was the girl who didn't stand out. But to Babatun, she was something else entirely. His favorite, not in a loud, obvious way, but in a quiet, intentional way that no one else ever understood. And that was the secret no one at that table knew. Dinner kept going like nothing had happened. Plates moved, people talked, and the soft laughter slowly returned. But now it felt different. A little forced. Little uneasy. Like something had already crossed a line, and no one wanted to talk about it. Nala didn't say a word. She didn't defend herself. didn't react, didn't even look at Sod again. She just sat there quietly, her posture straight, her face calm, but her eyes were different now. She was watching, not in an obvious way but carefully, noticing who laughed, who stayed silent, who avoided looking at her, who didn't. It was like something inside her had shifted. Instead of shrinking, she became still, observant, almost distant. Across the table, Funmi had already moved on, back to being the center of attention, telling stories, laughing loudly, making sure the focus returned to her. Sod sat beside her. It was just harmless fun. And everyone else followed along. Everyone except one person. At the head of the table, Baba Tund had been quiet this whole time. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't joined the conversation either. At first, it didn't seem unusual. He was known for being calm, reserved. But then, slowly, his gaze shifted. It landed on Nala. More specifically, on her wrist. For a brief second, it was almost unnoticeable. Just a glance. But then his eyes stayed there, focused. Nala felt it before she even looked up. That subtle weight of someone truly seeing her. Her fingers instinctively moved slightly over the bracelet, like she suddenly became aware of it again. And when she finally looked up, she saw it. The change in his face. It was small but undeniable. The calm expression he had been wearing all evening tightened. His eyes sharpened slightly, like something had just clicked in his mind. Something serious. Something important. The air in the room shifted. It wasn't loud. No one said anything yet. But it was there. That quiet tension that spreads before something happens. Few people noticed too. Conversations slowed. Someone cleared their throat. Another person glanced between Baba Tund and Nala, confused. Because his attention wasn't casual anymore. It was intentional. Direct. And for the first time that night, Nala wasn't invisible. She didn't speak. She didn't move much. But inside she felt it. Something was about to change. Not because she reacted, but because someone finally noticed what everyone else had ignored. The room had gone strangely quiet, but no one wanted to admit it. A few people still tried to keep their conversations going, but their voices were lower now, distracted. Eyes kept drifting back to the same place. Baba Tund and Nala. Baba Tund didn't look away. His gaze stayed fixed on her wrist, on the bracelet, like nothing else in the room mattered anymore. Then finally he spoke. "Where did you get that?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Every sound, every movement, every fake laugh. The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. For a second no one moved. All eyes turned to Nala. This time she didn't look down. She didn't shrink. Slowly, she lifted her head and met his gaze. Her face was calm, steady, like she had nothing to hide. And then she answered, softly but clearly. "You gave it to me." Silence. Not the kind of silence from before. This one was different, deeper, uncomfortable. It felt like the entire room had stopped breathing at the same time. A few people exchanged quick glances, confused. Someone shifted in their seat. Another person looked at Funmi, waiting for her reaction. Because this didn't make sense to them. Funmi let out a small laugh, trying to break the tension. "Oh, please," she said lightly, waving her hand like it was nothing. "That can't be right. Baba gives gifts all the time. She must be mixing things up." Her tone was casual, almost playful. But there was something tight underneath it. Something uneasy. She looked around the table, hoping someone would laugh with her. A couple of people forced small smiles. But it didn't land. Because Baba Tund didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. If anything, his expression grew more serious. His eyes stayed on Nala, searching, remembering. And in that moment it became clear. He wasn't confused. He was thinking. Carefully. Slowly, he leaned back in his chair, his fingers resting against the table, his gaze never leaving her. The room felt smaller now, tighter. Like the walls were closing in around the truth no one was ready to hear. Funmi's smile started to fade. Just a little. Because this wasn't going the way she expected. Not at all. And for the first time that night, the attention in the room wasn't on her anymore. It was fully on Nala. And no one knew what was about to come next. But everyone could feel it. Something had just been unlocked, and there was no going back now. No one spoke for a few seconds. The silence stretched so long it started to feel uncomfortable. People shifted in their seats, glancing at each other, then back at Baba Tund, waiting for him to say something. Anything. And then he did. "That bracelet," he said slowly, his voice calm but firm, "is not ordinary." You could feel the change instantly. Some people frowned. Others leaned forward slightly, trying to understand what he meant. The same bracelet they had just laughed at suddenly didn't feel so small anymore. Baba Tund gestured lightly toward Nala's wrist. "I had it made," he continued. "Custom made." A quiet murmur spread across the table. Custom made. Now people were really looking at it. Not casually anymore, but carefully, like maybe they had missed something important. Nala didn't move. She just let them look. "There's something inside it," he added, that made everyone pause again. "Inside," someone whispered. Baba Tund nodded slightly. "A family insignia. Hidden. You won't notice it unless you know where to look." The room went still. This time no one laughed, because this didn't sound like a simple piece of jewelry anymore. This sounded intentional, important. Across the table, Funmi's smile completely disappeared. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice a little sharper now, a little less confident. But Baba Tund didn't rush his words. He took his time, like he wanted everyone to fully understand what he was about to say. "It's not just a bracelet," he said. His eyes moved slowly across the table, making sure everyone was listening. "It is a symbol." No one interrupted. No one even breathed too loudly. "A symbol of succession." The words landed heavy. For a moment, it felt like no one processed them. And then, everything changed. Faces dropped. Eyes widened. Someone almost dropped their glass. Another person leaned back in shock, whispering something under their breath. Succession. That word alone carried weight in that house. It wasn't casual. It wasn't small. It meant power. It meant inheritance. It meant choice. And suddenly, every single person in that room understood what this could mean. Slowly, almost unconsciously, their eyes shifted back to Nala. Not with dismissal anymore, but with disbelief, with questions, with something close to fear. In Funmi, her face had completely changed. The confidence, the control, the slight smirk she had earlier, it was all gone, replaced with something else. Something tense, something shaken. 'Cause for the first time, it felt like she had misunderstood everything. And Nala, the one they laughed at, might have been the most important person at that table all along. For a moment no one spoke. Then Funmi suddenly let out a sharp breath, like she couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why would you give that to her?" Her voice wasn't soft this time. It wasn't playful or controlled like before. It came out raw, almost shaking. All eyes turned to her. She leaned forward slightly, staring directly at Baba Tund, but there was something else in her expression now. Something deeper than confusion. It was frustration. No, it was jealousy. "I mean, it doesn't make sense," she continued, her tone rising a little. "Out of everyone here, why her?" The question hung in the air, but it wasn't really a question. It was years of expectation breaking. Because everyone in that family knew one thing without ever saying it out loud. Funmi was always the one who spoke the loudest, took the lead, made decisions. The one who acted like everything already belonged to her. The one people naturally followed. She had always carried herself like the future was already hers. And no one ever challenged it. Not openly. Not even Baba Tund. So in her mind, there was no competition. Especially not from Nala. Nala, who sat quietly at the edge of rooms. Nala, who no one really noticed. Nala, who was always there, but never important. At least, that's what they all believed. Funmi let out a small, bitter laugh, shaking her head. "She doesn't even." She stopped herself, but the meaning was already clear. "She's never been involved. She doesn't lead anything. She barely speaks." Every word hit the room harder than the last. Because now, it wasn't just confusion. It was exposure. The truth was slipping out. Funmi had never seen Nala as equal, not even close. To her, Nala wasn't a threat, she was irrelevant, and that's why this hurt so much. Because somehow, without noise, without attention, without approval, Nala had been chosen, quietly, privately, while everyone else was busy looking in the wrong direction. A heavy silence followed. No one defended Funmi, but no one interrupted her either, because deep down, some of them had thought the same way. Their eyes slowly moved back to Nala, but this time there was no dismissal in them, only realization. All those years they overlooked her, all those times they ignored her presence. It wasn't because she didn't matter, it was because they never bothered to look closely enough. And now, sitting there in silence, Nala didn't argue. She didn't react to Funmi's words. She just sat still, calm, composed. But the power in the room had already shifted, and everyone could feel it. The tension in the room was already heavy, but it was about to get even heavier. Before anyone could say anything else, the door opened. A man stepped inside, calm, professional, holding a slim leather folder in his hand. Some people recognized him immediately. "Chaik," someone whispered. It was the family lawyer, Chaik Obi. He didn't look surprised by the atmosphere. If anything, he looked like he had been expecting this exact moment. "I believe this is the right time," he said politely, walking toward the table. Now everyone was fully alert, confused, nervous, watching every step he took. Baba Tund gave a small nod, like this had all been planned, and just like that, it became real. Chaik placed the folder on the table and opened it carefully. The sound alone felt loud in the silence. "These documents," he began, his voice steady, "were prepared under Baba Tund's instructions." No one moved, no one even tried to interrupt. "Everything has been legally recorded and verified." Then he looked up and said the words that changed everything. "Nala has been officially designated as the heir." Felt like the air left the room. Someone gasped softly. Another person leaned back in shock. A glass lightly hit the table with a quiet clink. But Chaik wasn't done. He continued, calmly flipping through the papers. "This includes primary ownership of the ancestral property, majority shares in the family businesses, and full decision-making authority moving forward." Each word landed heavier than the last. Property, heirs, authority. This wasn't small. This was everything. And it had all been decided, quietly, without arguments, without announcements, without anyone knowing. All eyes turned to Nala again. But this time there was no doubt left, no confusion, just pure shock. And then, Funmi broke. "No," she whispered at first, shaking her head slowly like she was trying to wake up from something. "No, this can't be right." Her voice started to crack. "You didn't tell anyone. You didn't even. How is this possible?" She looked at Baba Tund, her eyes searching for something. An explanation, a denial, anything. But he stayed calm, silent, certain. And that silence said more than words ever could. Funmi let out a shaky breath, her composure slipping completely now. "All this time," she murmured, almost to herself. "All this time I thought." She couldn't even finish the sentence. Because the truth was too clear now. While she was busy assuming, planning, and claiming a future she believed was hers, it had already been given to someone else. Quietly, completely, her shoulders dropped as the realization fully hit her. Not just disappointment, but loss. And across the table, Nala still hadn't moved much. Still calm, still quiet. But now, everyone finally understood why. For a long moment no one said anything. Then slowly, Nala stood up. The sound of her chair moving against the floor felt louder than it should have. Every eye followed her. Every breath in the room felt paused. She didn't look angry. She didn't look emotional. She just looked calm, in control. Her fingers lightly touched the bracelet on her wrist, almost unconsciously, before she lifted her gaze and looked around the table. At every face that had ignored her, laughed at her, overlooked her. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, but clear enough that no one could miss a single word. "I never needed to prove my worth." Small pause. "You just never looked." No one interrupted. No one could. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Nala didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She didn't throw their words back at them. She didn't need to. Everything had already been revealed. She glanced at Baba Tund for a brief second, then back at the family. "I'm not here to fight anyone," she added calmly. "I never was." That confused a few people. You could see it in their faces. Because this wasn't the reaction they expected. No anger. No revenge. Just quiet certainty. "But things will change," she continued. "Not because I want them to, but because they already have." And that was the truth they couldn't escape. She didn't need to take anything from them. She already had control. The house, the business, the decisions. Everything now ran through her. A soft, broken voice came from across the table. "Nala." It was Funmi. Her eyes were slightly red, her voice unsteady, nothing like the confident woman from before. I didn't know," she said quietly. "If I had." But Nala gently shook her head. It wasn't harsh. It wasn't cold. But it was final. "It shouldn't have mattered," she replied. And that was it. No long speech. No dramatic ending. Just truth. Nala turned and walked away from the table, leaving behind a silence that no one knew how to fill. A little later, she stepped out onto the balcony of the ancestral house. The night air felt different, lighter somehow. For the first time, she could breathe without that quiet weight sitting on her chest. She looked down at her wrist. The bracelet caught the soft light, shining gently. Not loud, not flashy, but steady. Just like her. Inside, everything had changed. But out here, it felt peaceful. She wasn't the girl they ignored anymore. She never really was. And as she stood there, looking out into the distance, one quiet thought settled in her mind. They laughed at what they thought was worthless. But the truth is,